Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Genes.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the costs of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Genes will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Genes swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Genes, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout-out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of this podcast. Hi, Julie.
Hello, Richard.
It's not the new year yet, but by the time our folks listen to this, it will be New Year. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
Do you have any plans for New Year's Eve?
Hell no.
Yeah.
I mean, I never do. I hate New Year's. As is a running theme in my life, you may have noticed.
You don't like holidays.
I don't like holidays because of the pressure. And New Year's is the worst. Not the worst, but New Year's is terrible because for years it was really hard for me to stay up till midnight, especially when my kids were young.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And so the first year my husband he doesn't let me do anything. The first year I was like, you know what, honey, I can't stay up. Is it okay? He's like, yeah, of course, whatever. It's just another, thing.
Right.
So I happened to wake up right at midnight.
Yes.
And I got up and I walked into the living room and my husband was there with like just a stony face looking at the TV and like and I was like, what is going on? And I realized he had a camera on him and he was making a video of how sad his New Year's was.
And then you ruined it.
And I ruined it by getting up. But because the motto of this family is all bits must be done.
All bits must be done.
All bits must be done. If you can think of a bit, do it. That's just what we do. For instance, for Christmas, if you watched SNL right before Christmas,
yes.
I got a robe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I actually got a robe only because my husband and I didn't do gifts to each other this year. Mm-hmm. We got one gift to each other to share.
That's always nice.
Yeah, and it's a really romantic chest freezer. But he had to do the bit with the robe, so I got a robe, which actually is lovely and cozy.
Oh, that's nice. This is the first New Year's Eve I haven't worked in 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, I remember I remember it's been 20 years because the last time I didn't have a piano gig on New Year's Eve, because of course for musicians that's a big night, New Year's Eve.
Oh, it was 2000.
It was the year 2000. I had a gig booked, and then it got canceled because if you remember, everyone was freaked out about the possible Y2K bug.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So basically, my New Year's Eve were canceled 20 years apart by two different bugs.
Oh, perfect.
The Y2K and the COVID. In the grand scheme of things, so I'll get to stay home and watch TV, you know.
It's New Year's Rockin' Eve, man.
Well, is that still on?
Yep.
Okay.
Only with Ryan Seacrest instead of...
Dick Clark is dead, huh?
Dick Clark is dead. Ladies and gentlemen, this just in.
Dick Clark has left the building.
Has been dead for like a good 5 years, I think.
See what happens when you work New Year's Eve? You miss out on everything.
I know. Yes, you don't. Because if you paid attention to New Year's Eve, you would have been well aware that Dick Clark is no longer with us.
Anyway, speaking of other things, DNA related.
Yes.
So, what's going on in DNA news?
Yeah. Well, there's kind of a lot going on. Stuff that is good to, talk about. Because that's what we do. Mindless banter as much as it is. So
you know how I love my mindless banter.
I do. So remember Jenna Robertson posted that video of the twins separated at birth, and the guy was doing, I told you the thing about the Love Actually with the
yes,
cards.
Yes, and I went back and watched it. Yes.
Yes. Very moving, yes?
I was... See, it sounds like I'm a know-it-all because I found out later what happened. Yeah. But when I was watching it, I felt like it was emotionally manipulative because of the background music.
Me too.
Only because of the addition of the background music. That's the one thing that was like, so somebody went in post-production, because I'm an editor here, right? Like I edit the audio, and I thought, somebody had to go and put that music on there to tug at the heartstrings. And it should be emotional enough without it. So it did raise my flags.
Okay, yes. And as soon as, probably the day that we recorded last time, I was like, I think you remember I said, I want to know more about this. And so I did a bit of a deep dive. And sure enough, that kid's an actor. He has an Instagram page. He's a twin. There's pictures of them as babies together.
Was he doing it as a joke or as a hoax, or was he doing it? I mean, was it one of these all bits must be played?
Yes, all bits must be done. That's a good way to look at it. I don't know. It irritated me just because it felt like the NPE version or the adoptee version of a cultural what is that called?
Misappropriation?
Yes, cultural misappropriation.
Yeah.
It's not their story to tell if it didn't happen to them.
Right.
And it's part of that whole narrative that all reunions are happy and special and magical. That is certainly not true. Yeah, somebody posted that, this is a hoax, but the message is still there.
Well, I mean, is this sort of the same thing? Like, I remember everybody has been watching The Queen's Gambit, right? Mm-hmm. Really, really good Netflix show.
Yes.
But I read online that a lot of people were really upset when they found out it wasn't a true story. And I didn't care. Like, I didn't even think it was true when I was watching it. It didn't say this is a true story, that she wasn't a real person and that this did not happen. And so people were really
upset about that.
Because,
it's entertainment.
Right. And so
not everything is supposed to be a true story.
What I'm questioning here is that did these two twin brothers do this as an entertainment? And whether, what was their intention, I guess?
Well, the intention is for attention. Basically, obviously, the guy is an actor. And that was another thing. I was like, he is freakishly good looking, these guys. And it just, like, you could tell he was comfortable being on camera. He knew his angles. All of this stuff that was like, and yes, I'm an actor too, right?
He was doing the Love Actually bit, right? With the
he was doing
the
Love Actually bit, right? Why couldn't he just talk to the camera?
Right.
Why did it have to be so dramatic? And I get it. I mean, I'm an actor too, so I'm comfortable on camera.
Yes.
But the fact that this was fake, just wrote, and I felt as soon as I Googled it, and I was like, why can't I see nothing else about this? Why is this not a huge story?
Right.
In this day and age. And sure enough, Leslie, our Australian biological mother friend of the show, was the one who pointed me to his Instagram page. And the rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, here's how I feel about this. Depending, again, it's all intention. And attention is fine. But I question, because things, once they're on the internet and they get shared in a different context or without context, can sometimes take on a whole life of its own, clearly. And so I wonder, if they were just doing this for fun and they put it on their Instagram page, as a lot of young people do, and did it get picked up as if it was truth and then spread around where it became bigger than what they meant? I don't know. I would love to know what
right. My guess is the goal was to make it go viral.
Okay, well.
I mean, that's pretty much anybody's goal if they're posting things on Instagram or anywhere in social media. The goal is that's just the nature of the beast.
On a completely different subject, sort of, I just want to say that I loved, and I forgot to mention this earlier, I loved your kids singing their annual Christmas song and the little video that you posted on the Facebook group.
In the group, yeah. This is a tradition my kids started 8 years ago. And it is so fun to watch a retrospective of that. One day I'm going to edit together just like everything, because you can just watch them growing up and evolving.
Oh, you should do that, for sure.
It's like the best home movie ever. Because you could, my son was like a chubby little 9-year-old when they first did it with he was a soprano, and now he's a baritone.
Yeah.
I'm a very proud mama that they do this tradition, and wonder how long it's going to go on for.
I know, right?
Yeah. I love that they love doing it, and they really love being with each other.
Yeah.
It's such a special thing for me to have kids that are siblings that actually like and respect each other.
For sure. And as long as they've been doing it this many years, why not continue it if they get together every Christmas and just do it and just have that record? I think that's so much fun. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank any of the listeners and the people on our Facebook group that commented or liked my video, my Pity Party Christmas song.
Oh, that's right. The Pity Party Christmas. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. That was so great.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
So great. Who was that singer? I liked his voice.
Alex Weiss. He's been on Broadway. He was in Spring Awakening here in L.A. and also in New York and a couple of other shows. He actually turned out to be a friend of the composer. And I met this composer in an online class this fall. I don't know. We've never met in person, but we were in a songwriting class together in New York. He's in New York. And we said, let's write a song together. And we're like, let's write a Christmas song. And then this is what turned out. And he turned out to know this Alex Weiss. And I said, let's get him to sing the song. And it worked out.
It was great. It was great. It was really fun.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Very cool. That should have gone viral. Elf triggered me this year. That's all I'm going to say. Elf is the ultimate NPE story.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, and I know, I've been watching it for years, but I haven't in the last 5. And I looked at it, and it was just at a part of the movie where he was like, I don't fit in anywhere. I don't fit in with my biological family, and I don't fit in with my adopted family. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. That is such the experience of so many adoptees and NPEs.
I did think of you when I watched, I didn't watch Elf, but I watched Santa Claus is Coming to Town, which is actually my favorite of the Rankin Bass animated Christmas specials, because it's sort of the origin story of Kris Kringle and Santa Claus. And the whole beginning of it is that they find this abandoned baby and they bring it to this elf village, where he's got a little thing around his neck that says Claus, but they name him Kris Kringle. And then later he finds out he was Claus, but he never really asks about who his real parents were. He doesn't seem that inquisitive. He's just really happy to be a Kringle and give off the toys and meet Miss Jessica.
It's amazing if you really start paying attention. It is amazing how much content evolves from parentless children.
Oh, yeah.
Look at Disney.
All the Disney stuff. They want to have, It's sort of like, it's almost like it makes you feel sorry for the character and want to see them succeed from the very beginning if they're an orphan of some sort.
Yeah. Okay, so I was on my 23andMe account this week, and I realized that I was disappointed. I'm disappointed in the traits, in the health. They tell you they test for several variants of rather serious diseases, which is great and important and helpful. And I happily do not have any of the variants except for a slightly elevated risk of age-related macular degeneration. Duh.
There's something to look forward to.
Well, look, I mean, I've been wearing glasses most of my life, so not necessarily age-related. But then everything else, variants not detected, which is good news. The breast cancer, the celiac disease, familial hypercholesterolemia.
You're going to live forever.
I'm going to live forever. Yeah. So, Parkinson's disease, type 2 diabetes, typical likelihood, whatever that means. But then we go into traits. And traits is something that's it's more light, and it's more like, because of your DNA, and they're basically going with the percentage of other people who have these traits that share similar DNA to you. And so this is the percentage. But it was way off in so many ways that I was like, oh, well, that's not helpful at all. The first and most important, possibly, is ability to match musical pitch. I have about a 50% chance.
Oh, no, that's not right.
Come on.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
The asparagus thing, I likely, bitter taste, yeah. Bunions, yeah, I have bunions. Cheek dimples, likely no dimples. I kind of have a dimple. Look, when I do this.
Oh, yeah, I see a dimple for sure.
But I have to make that weird face, so not really, I guess. Cilantro taste aversion. Slightly higher odds. I love cilantro. I probably didn't as a child. Cleft chin. Likely no cleft chin. Can you see my chin?
Yes.
I have a semi-cleft chin.
Do you?
And
is it a bass clef or a treble cleft?
Thank you. It's a bass clef because of the bass of my face.
Yeah, it's a music joke, folks.
Yeah. These are the jokes. But my father and all three of my brothers on my father's side have a very pronounced cleft in their chin, and I believe that's probably where that came from.
Isn't that more common in men than in women?
Yes. And so I think the fact that I have a slight one is significant.
Okay.
Fear of heights, yeah. Fear of public speaking, less likely to have fear of public speaking. No kidding. Likely index finger longer, nope. Hair photo bleaching, more likely to experience hair photo bleaching. That's when your hair turns blonde in the sun. Likely, light or dark hair, likely light. My natural hair is very dark, as you know. Mm-hmm. So they got that wrong. Mosquito bite, blah, blah, blah. Motion sickness, blah, blah, blah. This is, and all of these are about if I am likely, it's like 50-50. Likely no red hair. I was born with red hair.
Even 50-50 isn't really saying much.
No, it's like life.
Yeah. You got a chance this could happen or not.
Right. And then the last one that they got way off was likely no widow's peak.
I see a little widow's peaking out there. Mm-hmm.
And that, again, is on my paternal side as well.
Yeah. Is that why you wore your hair back, so you could show me your widow's peak today?
No, I wore my hair back because I'm lazy.
Okay. Maybe that's also part of the 23andMe traits, is that you're... Is that you're lazy? She's 50% lazy, 50% not.
I don't know if that's a trait, but it's true. My parents thought I was very lazy as a child.
Is it nature or nurture, Julie?
I think it's nature.
Do you?
Yes, I do. And on that note...
Let's take a break.
Okay.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, here we go. Let's tell some stories from the trenches.
From the trenches.
Okay, so day before yesterday, I called, I sent a letter at the beginning of December to a biological mother, somebody I believed was a biological mother. I'd already figured out who the father was. She had no siblings, and we had DNA connected to both of her parents with no other familial marriages, like no other aunts or uncles had married each other from both sides of the family. So that was out of the question. And she answered, and she was very nice. And she said she hadn't received my letter because it was sent to her P.O. box, and I guess she doesn't check her P.O. box very much. So, and so I started to tell the story. And long story short, she's just like, oh, it wasn't me. And she was very matter of fact about it. And even I explained to her how I arrived at that and the DNA matches that match her. And she kept talking about this one uncle had a daughter and it must be her or something like that. But that daughter is actually a DNA match. That's the one that pointed me to her. And the more I tried to explain it, the more she was very cavalier about it. Like she was either so deep in denial that it didn't even break the surface.
So you're thinking, like, in your experience, that's not been the case when you've approached people that you've matched that way. They're either like surprised or they deny it wholeheartedly. Like
they deny it wholeheartedly to
and
where
emotionally, like,
yes,
angry.
They're angry about it. That I've But she was just so. I am so confused as to what to do next. I went back and made sure, okay, was this the father on this side?
You thought, like, maybe it was my mistake because she seemed so
exactly,
sure.
Because I've never done something that had matches that closely that was so off.
But I understand why you would do that, why you go back to check,
well, sure,
right?
Yeah. But she would have only been 15 at the time. So I'm sure there is trauma. She told me she had never even been to the city that the client was born in.
Wow.
So,
I mean, that's,
I don't know.
Again, strange.
It's very strange. But she has I said, you know what? I'm just going to, I was calling because this person wants to let you know that let his mother know that he is happy and that she did the right thing and he's appreciative and all that. And you have my number if something occurs to you.
I mean, is it sort of to make it personal, like your birth mother still says she never even knew your birth father, and you're like, well, wait a minute.
And in as casual a way.
Yeah.
Too.
So that is a thing.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen or where it's going to go from here. It was so strange. It feels so unfinished.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for the client, we may never get a real answer, or maybe something else will come in that will clarify something that I did miss. Like maybe both of her parents did have a child that they gave up. That has happened.
But all you can do from your end is make the connection. You can't make somebody, I can't make you love me if you won't.
Exactly. Or not even just acknowledge. We don't need love. I can't make you acknowledge me. Yeah.
The song wouldn't have been a hit if they used acknowledge.
Yeah, it doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? So there's that. Here's one that I never thought I would say. Here's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Beware of Mennonites.
I'm not going to touch that one.
I know. Be careful. Be very careful. So I got this case looking for both of her parents. The maternal side was very easy. I had a name plus 2 or 3 half siblings were already in the DNA. So it was very simple. And I thought, and then there were very high matches on the paternal side. So I thought, this is going to be easy. As I begin to build the paternal side, I keep seeing the same names over and over again. And on various different generations, the same surnames, but different. And I was like, Then I started looking at the records, and they're all from the Mennonite church of a specific town in Ohio that is like, so Mennonites are basically Amish light.
Okay, Amish light. Okay.
Amish light. So they look modern, but at some point, they were a very endogamous society, and they were very isolated, I guess. So it was as soon as I realized that, and I explained to the client, I'm like, this one side, though it looks easy, is not going to be as easy. And of course, then you go down that rabbit hole of trying to explain what that means without saying, that it's incest, because it's not. Anyway, the good thing is she was born in California, and all of these people are in this town in Ohio. So at least I had a location to focus on.
Yes, it was different.
Yes. And there were two high matches that match like high first cousins. Mm-hmm. And once I figured out who one was and built her tree. And I finally yesterday figured out who the other one, and I also figured out that his father had a marriage before him and there were children from that marriage. So he is very clearly or very easily could be a half uncle. And then those children, one of them I actually discovered living in the same county that my client was born. So that's very helpful.
Yes.
The problem is that the other high match that is almost as high as this match, she matches as a high first cousin, is actually a second cousin. So she should match around 200 to 300 centimorgans. She matches over 1,000 centimorgans.
Wow.
So that gives you pause. And of course, we have to go back to, endogamy. And there's this name. There is a name that is several names that are repeated throughout the tree, but one that is actually the name of the town they live in. Like, say it was Jones. They live in Jonesville. And, so I have to think that it's because of just, she matches the same great-grandmother in 3 different ways or something like that. And that would explain that. The only way I would feel comfortable 100% saying this was your father, he's passed away, is if I can get one of his siblings or children or nieces or nephews to test so that I could be more certain that that's not endogamy as well, even though I have those other hints.
Right.
But without scientific proof, and, the science goes out the window with endogamy.
So beware the Mennonites is what you're telling me.
Beware the Mennonites.
I don't think I even knew what a Mennonite was before today.
I didn't either. I didn't either until I started seeing that they were all Mennonites, and then I realized where they were and how close to Amish country they were.
Yes.
And it all just kind of fell into place and my blood ran cold.
See, I learned something new every day on this podcast, Julie.
We all do. We all do.
You know what I'm in the mood for?
What?
Some listener questions.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. Let me see. I've been getting some great questions as well as some silly questions from friends I went to high school with. So we will ignore
You put
those.
a call out on the Facebook group page, right?
I did.
If you have any questions that we can answer in the podcast, and we got a good response.
Yeah, we did. And keep them coming, guys, because I really enjoy it. Rebecca Lynn Cameron Cox asked, she said, approximately what year did artificial insemination become a treatment? My mom and dad lived in a very small college town and apparently tried for 7 years to have me and even looked into adoption. Then I arrived April of 1960. I know because of what is happening in all of these movies and these stories coming out with doctors who mixed their sperm with the birth certificate father's sperm, and that happened in the 40s and 50s and 60s.
Which is crazy. I mean, just crazy. Yeah.
Crazy and way more common than we're comfortable with.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah. So I took a little deep dive, and I'll just to give a timeline of the history of artificial insemination.
Okay.
So the first recorded case was John Hunter in 1790, who helped impregnate a linen draper's wife.
What? Really?
Yes, 1790.
How the hell did they do that?
If you think about it, I mean...
I don't want to get, graphic, but it just seems like this is something that would be difficult to do outside of a, laboratory.
Have you heard of a turkey baster? That's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it worked?
Yeah. If it's not, I don't think they used a turkey baster. I don't know if they had turkey baster in 1790, but something, basically some kind of injection system.
Right.
Much like the one that men are built with. will work as
Right.
long as there is viable sperm in it.
Wow.
If you think about that. The first reported case of artificial insemination by donor occurred in 1884. Dr. William Pancoast, a professor in Philadelphia, took sperm from his best-looking student to inseminate an anesthetized woman.
Oh, dear.
The case was reported 25 years later in a medical journal. The sperm bank was developed in Iowa starting in the 1950s.
Can we just go back to that for a second?
Yeah, sure.
You and I know there's no way this poor woman knew what was going to happen when she went under.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure not.
horrifying.
I wonder if she was like married and was just, because in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, the doctors who did this called it a special treatment.
Yeah.
They didn't hint that it possibly wasn't their husband's sperm.
Why do I get the feeling, just from all the stories we've told, that she went in for some kind of appendectomy and ended up coming out pregnant?
Gosh. My gosh.
It's terrible. I think we need to do a further deep dive into this, Julie.
Okay,
this
fine.
Is
I will go
disturbing
back
me.
and look at that a little more. So in 1941, it was reported that 9,489 women had been successfully impregnated and that 90%, this is 1941, 97% of the pregnancies had terminated successfully, meaning viable babies were born. These figures were compiled from a questionnaire sent to 30,000 doctors, of whom 7,000 replied, and of those, 4,000 reported that they had carried out successful impregnations. 40s and 50s, AI was carried out discreetly by private medical practitioners. It was decided that it was best to leave unregulated, and remains so today, which is true in the U.S. Parents were told to never tell anyone, not even the child. Ugh. This practice of secrecy continues on for decades and is still recommended by some experts, air quotes, even today. In 51, further evidence as to the extent of the practice in the United States is the statement made by Plaskow to the effect that by 1951, the number of children born as a result of artificial insemination had risen to 20,000.
Artificial insemination doesn't necessarily mean that it is from a donor, right? I mean, can it be also possibly from the husband or whatever of the woman who just for some reason they're not able to get pregnant the natural way?
Yes. I believe so. I think they were probably telling them that if we do it like this and just we have a bullseye and we can concentrate the sperm. They just dropped the fact that maybe I'll mix some of my own in there.
Just increase the odds.
Oh, there's this documentary on HBO called Baby God. And it's about this doctor in Nevada who basically made a practice of using his own sperm.
Oh my God.
And he had his own hospital where he would do this, where he would, apparently he would leave the room and come back with a fresh sample. Oh. I know. Wow. So this woman who is one of his children did this documentary, and we met several of the children who didn't know this and several of the mothers who didn't know this. I mean, that was bad enough in and of itself.
Yes.
It turns out, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know, guys, fast forward 30 seconds.
Okay.
Turns out this guy was also a pedophile. With his own children.
It's worse and worse, Julie.
Yes. He ended up impregnating one of his daughters, and the father, doctor, whatever you want to call him, was righteous about it. And in that particular case, he said he was just giving a pelvic exam and used the wrong instrument.
Yeah, his penis.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
That's awful. This is a horrible story.
I know. I'm so sorry.
We have to talk about this stuff because it happens, right. And if people don't talk about it, then it never comes out, and people don't know that how horrible people can be. But here's the thing: I don't understand men who have this need to spread their seed in that manner. I've got to, I'm sure it was a power thing, right?
Oh, it's the ultimate narcissistic, sociopathic, psychotic
So he might even be able to tell himself, I'm helping these women who want to get pregnant. Now they're pregnant and they have babies. But
right. And at one point they were like, nobody will ever know.
Right. Because before DNA, who would have known, right? Or how could they have proven it?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
My goodness.
So watch it if you want, guys. It's very interesting. And the interviews with some of the mothers and some of the children and his own children and stepchildren are fascinating.
And what's the name of the documentary again?
Baby God on HBO.
I can't promise I'm going to watch it just because already I feel like I need to go take a shower after talking about it. It's so gross.
Yeah.
But let's take a break, and I'm going to go take a shower.
You better be quick. Okay.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Jeans with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cut Off Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
Okay, it is story time.
Story time. Yes.
This is the conclusion of my conversation with Edward De Gangi, author of the book, The Gift Best Given, a memoir. Where we left off was Ed had met his half-brother from his mother's side, who was the professional ice skater, and was having difficulty convincing him that his mother had a child 7 years before he was born. And he actually even showed him the adoption papers with his mother's signature on it. And the brother, his response was, my mama would have told me. And that was where we left off. So let's hear the rest of the story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
He he still couldn't quite get it. I said, I've got one more thing for you. And, if you want to keep it, you can. It's just a photocopy. And I had brought a copy of the adoption decree. And by then I knew that her signature on it was her signature.
Because you'd seen her handwriting.
Yeah, I'd seen her handwriting in a number of places. I said, and I explained to him what it is. I said, this is the signature page for my adoption decree. And, your mother placed me for adoption and signed this. And I handed it to him, and he looked at it. And, and he looked at me and said, my mama would have told me. I said, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
I said
more often than not, absolutely not.
Yeah, I said, I don't think it's something a mother is going to tell her son, especially 8 years after the fact.
Mm-hmm. And especially back then.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
So we passed some time. We visited again the next day, and we came home, and I talked to him later in the week, and he said, well, I took the adoption decree down to show it to the administrator of the rehab facility where he had been a resident.
Uh-huh.
I said, okay, I said, what did he say? And I guess this is a person he respected and he thought was a good second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, he looked at it, and he asked me if that's my mother's signature. And I said, well, what did you say? And I told him, yeah, it was. And he said he just looked at it again. He looked at me and he said, Ted, looks like you have yourself a brother.
So he took the opinion of somebody else.
Yeah, and since then, he's been good as gold.
Have either of you taken a DNA test?
I have done DNA. He has not.
He needs to.
Yeah, he does. I've found other members. I've found cousins through DNA, maternal cousins, who he acknowledges as his cousin. So, there's no question about it.
Right.
Yeah, there's no question. The interesting thing with the DNA test is I took one actually before this whole thing began.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple of months before it began. It was a Christmas. I bought it for myself and for my wife for a Christmas present. She was too busy to spit, so didn't do it for a month. I did mine, sent it in, then it got caught in the Christmas rush. And, I started my search in February. I didn't get results back until May.
Whoa!
And it came back, and I was curious. My adoptive parents my father was Italian, my mother was Ukrainian. And, so I had always, that was my identity ethnically.
Yeah.
And it came back, so I was interested to see, and it came back as 50% Eastern European,
Okay.
about 30% Ashkenazi Jew, and and then 20 or 15% kind of a mix of British
European,
Isles, Northern Europe.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, but then I went back to the matches, and what do I find but a high certainty close match first cousin, or what was it?
Probably close family to first cousin.
So and fortunately, lo and behold, I go and look, and he's a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and had an extensive family tree online.
Okay.
And I looked at that, and he had. I eliminated. He's not responsible for my maternal line.
So he was definitely
this has got to
paternal.
be on my paternal. And I look. His mother was one of 6 sisters and 1 brother.
Oh.
I said, there he is.
Oh.
So I went and I researched him, and this was somebody who grew up in North Dakota, I think, and then moved to Texas to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
And, with this in hand, I sent a message to the person they identified as my cousin and said, does this all make sense to you? And again, just, as far as just being a gift of great people, within 15 minutes he answered me. And, he's happy. So I'm more than happy to, welcome to the family, more than happy to help you. And what you're saying makes total sense. It seems to make sense. And then 15 minutes passed. I'm telling my wife, I think I found my father. And 15 minutes later, I get another message. He said, I'm looking at this again. And he said, there are a couple of things. You said you were conceived in San Francisco. As far as I know, my uncle never left Texas. And he said, and there's one other thing. He said, I'm looking at your pie chart, and, you're, at that time, I think it was 25%, 30% Ashkenazi Jew. He said, my uncle has no Jewish background at all.
Right.
He said, so unless it's coming from your mother's side, I have one other thought. And he sort of left me hanging. So I wrote back and said, okay, this is really kind of interesting, because this predates the days when people hopped on a plane for a weekend date.
Right.
And I said, as far as I know, there's no Jewish blood on my mother's side. They were
right.
They were Polish refugees, but they were all the documents I found were from Catholic churches.
Right.
He said, here's my theory. He said, my father was half Jewish. And I think you and I are half brothers.
Yep, that sounds right to me.
And ultimately, Ancestry came back and recalibrated and put us down as half brothers. Yeah. 23andMe immediately identified us as such.
Sure.
So, just totally by accident, I popped up with a half brother.
Wow.
It sounds like, my mother and his father had a very fleeting summer relationship.
In San Francisco.
She left San Francisco not knowing she was pregnant.
Right. And I'm sure he never knew that she was pregnant either. Right. So, case solved.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's awesome.
So as I said, on the paternal side, my half brother has got an extensive family tree. Some questions about places, before people emigrated. Mm-hmm. On my mother's side, the one remaining part is, her paternal side, I think, is identifiable. I'm back to a great-grandfather and possibly a great-great-grandfather. Mm-hmm. On her mother's side, these were people who came from Galicia in the late 19th century.
Galicia?
Yeah, the Ukraine,
Oh, okay.
southeastern Poland. And they came with the father came with a very long Polish name and immediately changed it to Skoski.
Sure.
And there are about 10,000 Skoskis in Chicago alone, not many in New York. And, yeah, so I found their story, at least that generation, fairly well, but have been able to identify no siblings and nobody prior to them.
Have you plugged the name into your Ancestry DNA matches?
Yeah, I have. I've found 3 or 4 people who match on someplace distant on the maternal side.
Oh, on the maternal side. Okay.
And I've chased after them, and 3, 4 people just have not answered.
Yeah.
And I've gone after them.
Yeah,
and
you have to be pretty aggressive if you want to get a response these days.
Yeah, it's difficult. So I was thinking of I might do a mitochondrial DNA test. I don't know what it'll give me, but
yeah.
Interestingly, it was a big family. All of the parents died in their 90s. All the children are long deceased, and I finally found the wife of what would have been Genevieve's uncle, alive and well and living in Pennsylvania. And I said, okay, this is it. Now I'm going to get some answers. And she responded to me, and she said, I am so glad you reached out. You can tell me something about my family.
Oh, no.
No.
No, you're supposed to tell me.
No, she said, we were so busy working. They were farmers.
Yeah.
She said, we were so busy working, we never had a chance to talk about things like that.
Yeah. I find that because I do so much research, I'm the one who's informing family about what I've discovered. Like I usually know more about most people's families than they do at this point.
Yeah, and when I've talked to my maternal cousins, all of them know the story of their grandfather's family. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, tell me what you know about the Skoskis. And they say, who's that?
Uh-huh.
I said, that's your grandmother's family. No, I don't know.
Yep.
So, this lady living in Pennsylvania is, I call the last Skoski. There may be more of her around, but neither she nor I are aware of that. And so that's kind of when I find some time, that's
the next
something I need to chase after.
Yeah, you might want to try different spellings of it and different and some siblings sometimes change it themselves. I have a friend whose last name is Pardo, but some of his very close relatives, I think they changed it to Pardee or something. Mm-hmm. And it's but they're the close, so you have to keep that in mind that people just kind of took it upon themselves. I've looked at the Skoskis with an I, the Skoskis with an E. Yes.
And then you take the Polish name, and you could spell that 10 million ways. And
yep.
So it's been a challenge. Yep. But interestingly, we were up in New York a couple of years ago. We went and visited the cemetery, and I went and we found where their farm had been. I managed to walk some of the property, and it was very fulfilling to do that.
I bet. I have that. I get that.
Yeah, I have more of a feeling with these people who I don't know a lot about, who are farmers, than I do with the family that were plumbers, that I do know a lot about.
Right. Oh, wow. Well, okay, so, Ed, what is the name of your book, and how do we get it?
The book is called The Gift Best Given, a memoir.
Love it.
And it tells my story of my search. Mm-hmm. It also tells Genevieve's story that I discovered from the time that she left home at the age of 17 in 1942. She traveled across the country alone by train to join a traveling ice show in Vancouver.
Wow.
And it continues through the point that she returned to New York, where nobody except her eldest sister knew she was back and pregnant. Mm-hmm. And it sort of walks through the process of her decision and giving birth, and then everybody going in their own direction. It's a tribute to my mother. She was a brave woman. I think you talk about open adoption. She specified who she wanted my parents to be.
That's wonderful.
She had a list of what she wanted, and Yeah, and she stuck to it, and miraculously somebody showed up and said, "I know those people."
And, that's wonderful.
Worked out for everybody.
Yeah. Well, Ed, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed the show so much.
Thank
you. You approach a serious topic with a smile on your face, and that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, for me, that's the best way to do it, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
Ed De Gangi, thank you so much for telling your story and for talking to me today. The name of the book, say it one more time.
The name of the book is The Gift Best Given, a memoir, and it's available through your local bookstores, any major online retailer, or on my website at degangiauthor.com.
Beautiful.
Well, that was good, Julie. It was a good interview.
I know. He's such a delightful. He's been posting in the Facebook group, too.
Yes, I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ed. It was really, thanks for sharing your story.
Yep, great talking to you, too. Hey, it's time for us to get out of here.
It is. I am Richard Castle, and I have a website, richardcastle.com, or you could follow me on the Twitter, @CastleSongs. And if you're interested in seeing a play that I wrote being performed online, it's called Virtual Happy Hour. It's part of a 10-minute play festival called Hindsight is 2021. And you can go to leftedgetheater.com, and you can read all about it and possibly even buy a ticket.
Put a link to it in the group.
Okay, I will.
As well. Hey guys, I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find me on the Twitter @Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Join the Facebook group, CutOff Jeans. Back to Twitter, it's CutOff Jeans Pod or @CutOff Jeans Pod. Send me an email at julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com. Please wear a mask.
Yes.
Please be kind to each other. And as always, the truth is in your jeans.